you are young, you are in your 20s, maybe not, maybe you are in your late teens, probably 18, 19, and reality is setting in and things are hitting you left, right, front, back, up, down, and you are beginning to ask yourself if you've been lied to all along, if you've been deceived all along, if your education is indeed important, if the things you ordinarily held as treasurable, the things you held as important as you ordinarily claimed them to be, or you were told indeed that these things were that important. And this is stemming from the fact that reality hits differently. Life almost doesn't really care. It has never appeared fair. And you've been watching lots of Nat Geo Wild, and you've been looking at the animal kingdom, and you've been looking at the brutality down there, and you've been trying to compare this with what ordinarily happens in the 21st century and what happens in our world today. And you've been looking around, you've been reading the news, you've been hearing of places like Ukraine, you've been hearing of places like Syria, you've been hearing of the many fights that have been happening in the Middle East. You've probably become acquainted with the reality of slavery and what colonialism did many years ago, and you are increasingly looking at people's life and you are saying, oh, there's no love. People don't really love, because as many times as you've tried approaching a girl or a guy and wanting to start something serious or wanting to really express yourself, you have been met with almost indifference. You've been met with a new kind of cynicism that you ordinarily yourself cannot really understand. You have been looking at the news and you've been reading up history, and you've come to hear a thing like World War II. You've come to hear something like the Holocaust. You've come to hear a thing like the Rwandan genocide, the reefs in Congo. You've come to hear about the illegal minings that go on in Congo, and you've come to hear of a place like Sudan. You've come to hear a place like Ethiopia. You've come to hear about Egypt. You've come to hear about old Ephesus, and you've come to hear that at the current moment it's used to be located in a place called Turkey. You've come to hear a place like the Hagia Sophia, and at a point it used to be a Christian cathedral. It got taken by the Muslims and it became a Christian cathedral again, and at the moment it has now been converted back to a mosque, and at the moment it's even a tourist attraction. And you've been wondering, what have they been talking about a place like Jerusalem? Is it really the place of God? Is it really where everybody should be going to? You've been hearing these things, and you've been seeing the struggle for this piece of land, and you've been hearing about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and you've heard that the Israel of today is not the Israel in the Bible, and you've heard that in a thing like 1948, the place like Israel was formed, and thanks to the United States and the United Kingdom, the wars have continued to hold on for almost 100 years now. And you've come to be told that there was a place called Terrazin. Many persons hold on, and they come to hold now as the last ghetto before you head down to the concentration camps and before you find yourself being killed. You've heard of someone like Saddam Hussein, and you've heard how he died. You've heard of someone like Gaddafi, and you now begin to have faint ideas of how he was haunted and the real reason why he was haunted and why he was killed. You've probably come to hear of someone like Robert Mugabe, and you've like asked yourself, what really did this guy do? And you've heard of someone like Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, different from the current Lumumba we have, but all from the same region. One Lumumba, the current PLO Lumumba from Kenya, and then the Lumumba of 1963 from Congo. And you've been asking yourself, what really happened? How did it happen that the Belgians and the Americans found their way to ordinarily get to kill such a man, and why did he die? You've probably heard of the Congo, but you ordinarily don't really know what ordinarily goes down there or what ordinarily went down there. You've come to hear of colonialism on different fronts. You've come to hear that a place like India at once found their way to Africa and did a couple of things, and Africans also did many things to themselves before the advent of the white man. You probably have come to hear of King Afonso, and you've come to ask yourself, what even led him to start speaking Portuguese, and what ordinarily led the Jesuits that came down there and the Franciscans that came down there to do the things they did, and how they changed, and how many persons came, and how traits ordinarily change. You've come to hear a thing like Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, and you've been asking yourself, Was Conrad really talking about the whites and their hearts of darkness who lived in Congo and around that region? Or was he really talking about the heart of darkness of Africans having hearts of darkness? Or probably will you want to forgive him as many persons get to forgive Hegel and his phenomenology of spirit and the absolute spirit hovering around and his attribution of what ordinarily made the Indians and what made Africans and what made Africans out of the scope of history and out of the scope of civilization. Do you really want to look at these things and really want to get to know them, or you just want to tell yourself, or you're already beginning to tell yourself, history is indeed enormous and I ordinarily have to look for a distraction here and there? Welcome to reality. That is the world we live in. The world of constant fighting, the world of constant killing, the world of privation and deprivation, the world of sorrow, misery, shame, anger, brutality, brutish behaviors, barbarism to the highest peak of it. And yet we almost do nothing. And if there's one thing we have learned from history, is the fact that we have learned nothing from history. Yeah, those stories you read and the information that probably you found your way to, or they have found their way to you, are as true as they were represented, but they were much more gorier than that. They were much more horrible than the way they get to be presented down there and the captures you get to see. So that when you look at Hiroshima, when you look at Nagasaki, and you look at the current day Japan, and you look at what ordinarily happened many years ago, you ask yourself, what if Japan had not attacked Pearl Harbor? What if on that Sunday morning, the fleet that was sent down there to bomb that harbor ordinarily just had their turn and then just went their way and did nothing? What if Einstein never discovered what would help Oppenheimer to ordinarily get the hydrogen bomb off? What if the scientists that ordinarily work at the Manhattan Project never really did what they did? What if the school Hitler was, when he was a young boy, was a little bit concerned with ordinarily his life and giving him a little of chance as to just kicking him out and then just letting him go the way he went? What if his obsessions and his sexual cravings were ordinarily met one way or the other and things ordinarily didn't go the way things went? What would have been of the world? What would we have been doing at the moment? What if Europe had not gone into different factions in the first quarter of the 20th century and in the last decades of the 19th century? What if greed had not been at the forefront of things? What if the exploitation of a people by another people, like we saw in India, like we saw in Africa, like we saw in Indonesia, what if things like that never happened? What if the Portuguese never found their way to Congo or found their way to Rwanda? What if the Belgians had stayed at bay? What if King Leopold had just been on his own and did almost nothing? What if the world ordinarily was just a good place? I'm sorry, my dear. There's nothing to show that the world is that good. There's nothing to show that the world has been that good. There's everything to show through history that we are capable of repeating and making things worse. But there's also hope that we indeed can make things better. Because there have been times, just like punctuations in long sentences, where we've come to experience peace as never before. Where we've come to experience peace and experience cordial relationship across boards than used to be the case in different epochs. I call them punctuations because they are indeed punctuations. I call them punctuations because they are very brief. You just take a pause and you move on. You take a pause and you take a break. You have a semicolon and you chill. You continue again. You have the M dash and you try to join something. You have the M dash and you are having something else. You have the full stop and yet another sentence continues. That is the world. That is the world you've been born into. And how the world ordinarily would become good or become worse is as a matter of time. You will be playing a role one way or the other. Either the role of the oppressed or the oppressor. And in choosing between being the oppressed and the oppressor, I think it's safer, despite the fact that nobody should romanticize poverty and romanticize suffering and romanticize pain. It is better to be an oppressed individual than to be the one oppressing. It is better to be the one at the receiving end of the pain than to be the one inflicting the pain. Time indeed will come to tell you what it takes to really to be an oppressor. Just live a little bit longer. Just live a little bit longer, and you get to see the psychological traumas and problems that come with ordinarily being the oppressor. The level of psychosis you get to go through, and the level of secular reasoning and the level of insecurity you will come to feel in the long run will tell you that one day you sat down listening to a young boy and he was saying, it is better to be the oppressed than to be the oppressor. It is better to be at the receiving end of pain than to be the one causing and inflicting the pain. But the world continues. The world continues in this cycle of pain, of sorrow, of shame. Yemen, Syria, Rwanda, Congo, Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Portugal, Belgium, Indonesia, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Mexico, Spain, Guatemala, you name it, El Salvador, Latin America, Italy, Poland, Germany, the Netherlands, you name it, Russia, Ukraine, old Yugoslavia, current day Turkey, old Turkey. The list continues. The problems are there. The transatlantic slave trade, the different journeys being done around that period, you name it. Boys and girls abusing themselves, using themselves and lying to themselves, men and women claiming to love each other yet doing nothing. The list continues on and on and on and on and on and on. The world has not shown any sign that we are short of bad people, and we have them in abundance. And sooner or later, we come to realize that we also make up for that number, one way or the other. Numbers of bad people is not born out of an invasion of aliens from a different planet. It's born out of you and I, and the level of indifference we ordinarily get to hold, and we ordinarily get to opine, and we ordinarily get to accept over and over and over and over again. How we get to tell ourselves the lies we tell ourselves over and over and over and over again. How we get to accept the fact that we are not capable of our limitations and we cannot push a bit further over and over and over and over again. How we tell ourselves that we are doomed and down here is just an existential absurdity all fused together, though such looks as though it's confusing and contradictory. We tell this to ourselves over and over and over and over again. How we tell ourselves that a thing as love is not possible between a man and a woman, and we believe these things over and over and over and over again. How we tell ourselves a man and a woman cannot just be friends and nothing attached, as opposed to the fact that the man probably is just waiting for the right time to strike, or the girl is just waiting for the right time to be laid or to be used or to be slept with or to be stimulated one way or the other. And how we tend to believe stuff like that over and over and over and over again. How we tell ourselves that a thing like humanity and equality and justice are not things that we ordinarily can attain here, and we believe these things over and over and over and over again. How we tell ourselves a thing like racism ordinarily is the way to go because we are different more than we are similar, despite the fact that science has proven that to a large extent we all have a common ancestry as far as we can know, heading down Africa. And the fact that we tell ourselves that we are different and we cannot be the same, and we hold on to this, we tie them, we hold them so close as farewell hugs over and over and over and over again. How we allow insults and inferiority complex to take our lives and champion our existence down here, and how we come to see life, and how we come to see our existence, and how we come to view the world, and how we come to look at ourselves as cheap beings, as people not worth living, enthroning the lies and the shames told to us by people, rather than looking deep within ourselves and telling ourselves that our lives down here can indeed make sense, and how we come to hold on to these things, and how we come to deceive ourselves and pretend as though we don't know that we are what more than what we ordinarily have come to believe, and we can ordinarily make progress and make meaning and make sense of our existence if we set the goals kind of so low that we ordinarily might not have the chance to fail, and take it up from there forward into a brighter day, into the brighter future. As opposed to in and about this, we just want to tell ourselves that, what they have said about us is true, and we believe this over and over and over and over again. It's the 21st century. It's a crazy world, The fights continue, and we do nothing. We haven't learned. Poland is less than 100 years. Warsaw was completely destroyed, and we have not learned. Mariupol fell in 80 days, and still the war continues, and the corruption down there in Ukraine continues. At the same time, people get to still donate, and people die and soldiers die. The Buryats get to die from the side of the Russians, and it's just crazy, and we just continue this killing, and we continue to kill ourselves, and we are that stupid to see through it that we ordinarily can live in peace and live well. The 21st century has given us a lot of things that we ordinarily can use and be happy. The aeroplane, the train stations, the different metros, the different ways we ordinarily can join together and see to it that we are more similar than we are different. The different technologies we've come to have here have shown to it that we can be in peace, and there's nothing to prove otherwise, and we still don't see reason within ourselves, and we don't even know that such a thing as peace is possible. For when somebody flies the plane, nobody gets to ask, is that person from Russia? Is that person from Israel? People just want to get to their destination. So that when somebody is driving a bus, nobody gets to ask, is that man a Polish? Is he a German? Is he a Dutch man? Is he Dutch? Is he French? Is he Polish? Is he English? Is he an Englishman? Is he American? Is he African? Most of the time, nobody really asks. We care about his competence and the ways in which he ordinarily get to lead life and get to lead such vehicles. But at the heart of the matter, at the heart of all our cravings, and at the heart of all our wars, and the heart of all the disservice we've done to ourselves, my dear fellow human strolling through the earth, is the fact that we've failed to understand ourselves, and we've not even paid attention to the fact that we can understand ourselves. We have not even paid attention to the fact that we have the chance and the prospect and the potentiality to come to achieve peace, as much as we are ready and willing to want to understand ourselves. Imagine the number of persons that have died. Imagine the number of sorrows that have been caused down here. Imagine the number of persons that have gone through pain, from the concentration camps and its gas and the various gas chambers in different camps, to the boats and the people that died in the transatlantic ocean, and the slavery that went down that particular way, the same thing that went down in the Sahara deserts, and even about the different evils we've seen in our world. Imagine that in and about all of these have just been about greed. The civilization you see in Europe, the one you see in America, the one you see in different parts of the world, the Asian world, the so-called Asian tiger. Why are they even called tigers? Go and look at them and ask how many bloods. I say bloods because it should be in the plural. Bloods. How many bloods and how much blood got spilled? Look at the advancement we've had in science and ask yourself how many persons died. And ask if indeed it's really worth it to die that way. Ask yourself how cheap peace is and how expensive we've made it become. Ask yourself and tell yourself, in a very short period, into the future, what side do you want to become? What side do you want to belong? The camp of the oppressors or the camp of the oppressed? Or rather, will you be at the side that ordinarily strive for peace and strive for progress down here and strive for a world where peace can become a human reality, where existence can be led and be led in peace, where meaning can be gotten from the chaotic reasoning down here, where a place like Syria and its history will be looked at as a thing of the past and a new alliance forged into the future, where Yemen would smile again, where Congo would have peace, where Sudan would get the much needed justice it needs, where Rwanda would calm down and be at peace with the world, where Poland would look at the concentration camps and say, never again in the history of the world are we going to be this bestial, are we going to be this oppressed, never again are we going to allow ourselves to be as subjugated and killed and mistreated the way we allowed ourselves many years ago. So that the Germans will look at themselves and say, oh, our ancestors did terrible things. So that the Russians will tell themselves, this imperialism has to stop. This unnecessary and unbridled killing has to be a thing of the past, and we are ready to learn. So that we have an Islamic religion where people ordinarily don't attribute it to the conquest it did many years ago, so that Catholicism and Christianity will not be looked at from the lens of the Crusades and will be looked at from the lens of what ordinarily ought to be looked at. Peace, progress, meaning, joy, togetherness, harmony, a glorious future, a harmonious world where the nations would truly be united and be called United Nation, and not leaving its veto power to one country, as opposed to the decree and the declaration and the intentions of other countries. These are my dreams, and these are my hopes, and these are my aspirations within my lifetime. But if not possible, at least no sooner than I have died should such come into play, should such become the reality of the world. Because the world as we have it, and the whole idea of geopolitics and the way we get to play it at the moment, is indeed demanding. And it demands more than we ordinarily can offer. And sometimes we don't even know that it demands so much from us. From yesterday to today into the future, we can talk and talk and talk and talk until talk becomes cheap. But until we realize the fact that we must start learning from history, we must start charting our course in the right direction, else we labor in vain, else we kill ourselves unnecessarily. We must start learning from our past and predicting and projecting a new future. There's nothing that shows that we cannot live better. Induction has its own problem. David Hume gave it all the credence it ordinarily gave, but you get to see the limitations down there. And someone like Karl Popper will talk about the idea of eliminating observation and eliminating hypotheses that ordinarily don't meet meaning, as opposed to using inductive reasoning to ordinarily look for truths. But still, we still tell ourselves that the world can get better. And the induction of the world in times past and how things have been doesn't in any way prove how things should be and how things can be in the future. Things can change. Look at the means of conversations and the means of communication and the means of communication we are now having in the 21st century. And ask yourself if even what was possible 200 years ago was possible 500 years ago. And see to it that the world is changing, and we have to adjust to this, constantly adjusting to life down here, holding on to virtue, holding on to truth, holding on to the things we ordinarily should hold on to. For the future is bright if we walk today with information we've had from the past. The future also can be gory and horrible and full of bile and full of hatred if we ordinarily don't implement what we ordinarily should be implementing to avoid the mistakes of times past. So that beyond punctuations of joys and happiness, we come to have stretches of sentences of joy and of peace, rather than just taking breaks of quiet and going to fight, rather than just taking moments of peace and heading back into war. Rather than just pushing the boulder up like Sisyphus, rather than doing this, we can forge a formidable ground down here, now, into the future. Because they say, those who plant trees don't plant trees because they believe they will be around to sit under the shade. Those who plant trees for future generations, not for themselves, not for their own shelter, not for their own shading. They plant trees knowing fully well that a future will come and benefit from that, and the birds also need a house, and that humans also need fruit from such. And life can ordinarily be brought under a tree for many reasons, from microbes to different things. We have to forge policies that ordinarily meet the 21st century. The demands are many. Almost everybody is talking. Our lives can be much more better if we allow ourselves the chance to be human, the chance to be vulnerable, the chance to be peaceful, the chance to be trusting. It's not about these are the things we ordinarily need. Else we continue repeating the past and repeating things that have happened in times past. I am Biringkpa in the Mecca, the mendicant. I am your brother, strolling this world with you. See you next time.